All right, so we're ready for another deep dive. And this time, we're heading into the world of aircraft dispatchers.
It's a pretty fascinating career path.
Definitely. And it's one that, a lot of people don't really know much about.
Yeah, most folks just think about pilots and air traffic controllers when it comes to aviation.
Right. But there's a whole team behind the scenes making sure those flights happen safely and on time.
Absolutely, and aircraft dispatchers are right at the heart of it all.
And today, we're going to help our listener get ready for that big interview they've got coming up for an aircraft dispatcher position.
That's right. They've shared some great materials with us.
Yeah, some really interesting career guides, interview tips, even some info about how AI is being used in the hiring process these days.
It's pretty cool how technology is changing things.
Definitely. So we're going to dive into all of that and pull out the absolute golden nuggets to help our listener ace that interview.
It's going to be like a flight plan for their career, so to speak.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So before we get into the actual interview questions, let's paint a picture for our listener. What exactly does an aircraft dispatcher do? They're not sitting in a tower like air traffic controllers, right?
Nope, not quite. Although there can be some overlap.
Okay, so tell us more.
They're kind of like the unsung heroes behind the scenes.
Working their magic.
Exactly. They're the ones who make sure flights take off and land safely and efficiently.
Sounds like a lot of responsibility.
Oh, it definitely is. They're authorizing flights, calculating fuel needs, monitoring weather, making sure everything follows all the regulations.
Wow, so much goes into it.
Yeah, and they're constantly coordinating with pilots, air traffic control, ground crews, the whole team.
It's like they're the conductors of this huge orchestra of moving parts.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so let's jump into those interview questions.
All right, let's do it.
One that pops up all the time in your materials is, why are you interested in this role?
Yeah, that's a clap.
How should someone approach that?
Well, this is your chance to really shine and show the interviewer your passion for aviation.
So more than just saying, I like planes.
Definitely. You got to go deeper than that. Think about what specifically draws you to this role.
What makes it stand out?
Right. Is it the problem-solving aspect?
Mm-hmm.
The fast-paced environment? The fact that you're contributing to safety?
All those lives in your hands?
Exactly. Find that thing that really excites you about the job and articulate it clearly.
Show them you've done your homework.
And connect it back to your own skills and experiences.
Speaking of skills, I noticed in the career guide, they really emphasize teamwork and communication.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Would those be good things to highlight in your response?
Absolutely. Aircraft dispatchers are constantly collaborating with other people.
So being a team player is essential.
Big time. And being able to communicate clearly and effectively is super important too, especially in those high-pressure situations.
That's a great tip. Now, what about certifications? There are a few mentioned in your materials.
Oh yeah, mentioning those would definitely show your dedication.
Like, you're serious about this career path.
Right. For instance, the Aircraft Dispatcher Certificate from the FAA, that's a must-have.
So definitely mention that if you have it.
And you can even talk about how you're pursuing other certifications to stay up to date. Always learning.
That's cool.
Shows initiative.
Okay, let's say the interviewer throws a curveball and asks, describe a time you had to make a difficult decision under pressure.
Ooh, yeah, they love those behavioral questions.
How would you tackle that one?
You need a good story for this one.
Something that showcases your ability to handle pressure.
Exactly. Think back to a situation maybe from a previous job or even just a volunteer experience.
Where you had to think on your feet.
Right. Maybe there was a time crunch, limited information, high stakes, and you had to make a call.
Walk them through it step by step.
And don't forget to highlight what you learned from that experience.
Interviewers love to see growth.
Definitely.
Now, what about questions related to technology?
Ah, yes, the tech side of things. It's a big part of the job these days.
I see in your materials that aircraft dispatchers use some pretty sophisticated software.
Oh, yeah. They're working with complex systems all the time, tracking flights, monitoring weather, all sorts of stuff.
So the interviewer might ask about your experience with specific programs.
Definitely. Or just your general comfort level with learning new tech.
So it's a good idea to brush up on the latest aviation software trends.
Absolutely. Get familiar with names like FlightAware, ARNC, Jeppesen. Show them you're tech savvy.
Okay, so we've covered some key interview questions. We're getting a good understanding of the aircraft dispatcher role.
Yeah, we're making good progress.
But let's not forget about those AI-powered tools we mentioned earlier.
Oh yeah, RoleCatcher. That's a game changer.
Can you tell us how it can help someone prep for this specific interview?
So RoleCatcher uses AI to analyze job descriptions.
And what does it do with that information?
It pulls out those crucial skills that employers are really looking for.
So instead of guessing what the interviewer wants, You're getting real insights from actual job postings
Exactly. And then you can use that information to tailor your resume, your cover letter,
to make them stand out.
and even your interview answers, highlight those specific skills.
That's so smart.
It gives you that competitive edge.
And what about the interview practice feature? How does that work?
It's basically like having a virtual interview coach.
Wow.
You practice answering common interview questions, and RoleCatcher gives you feedback.
That sounds really useful.
It analyzes your clarity, your conciseness, even your tone of voice.
So it's like having a personal trainer for your interview skills.
Pretty much. It helps you refine your answers and boost your confidence.
That's incredible. Okay, so we've talked about highlighting your skills, using RoleCatcher. But before we move on to more interview questions, I want to circle back to that career guide for a second.
Sure.
I notice it talks about different stages of an aircraft dispatcher's career.
Yeah, it's not just one static position. There's definitely room to grow.
So tell me about that progression. How does it work?
Well, you could start in an entry-level role,
And from there?
move up to junior dispatcher, then senior dispatcher, and eventually maybe even become chief aircraft dispatcher.
So you're not just stuck in one spot. You can really build a career in this field.
Absolutely. And each step comes with more responsibility, more complex challenges.
That's really encouraging to hear.
Hmm.
And what about those hidden pros and cons that someone might not know about going into this field?
Well, one of the biggest pros, besides the good salary potential, is the satisfaction of knowing you're playing such a vital role.
Keeping those flights safe and on time.
Right. You're making a real difference in people's lives. But on the flip side, it can be a pretty demanding job.
High pressure, long hours, I imagine.
Yeah, especially with those irregular schedules, weekends, holidays.
It's not always a 9 to 5.
And you got to be comfortable making quick decisions in stressful situations.
It's not for the faint of heart.
Definitely not. But for those who thrive on challenge and have that passion for aviation, it can be incredibly rewarding.
Sounds like it. Okay, so let's dive back into those interview questions. Any other tips you can share to help our listener really ace this thing?
Let's talk about the question. How do you stay up to date with the latest changes in aviation regulations and technology?
Yes, the aviation industry is always evolving.
Constantly changing. So this question is all about showing your commitment to continuous learning.
So how do you demonstrate that?
Mention specific publications you read, like Aviation Week or the Journal of Air Transportation.
Okay, so drop some names.
And professional organizations you belong to, like the Aircraft Dispatchers Federation.
Shows you're in the loop.
Exactly. And talk about how you proactively seek out information about new technologies and best practices.
So don't just wait for information to come to you, go out and find it.
Exactly. Show that initiative.
Okay, so we've talked about passion, skills, staying current, even using those AI tools to your advantage.
We've covered a lot.
Anything else our listeners should keep in mind as they prep for this interview?
Oh, one more thing. Prepare some good questions to ask them at the end of the interview.
Ah, yes, the classic. Do you have any questions for me?
It shows you're genuinely interested and that you've done your research.
What kind of questions would be appropriate for an aircraft dispatcher interview?
You could ask about their training programs for new dispatchers or their perspective on how technology is impacting the field.
So kind of turning the tables and interviewing them a little bit.
In a way, yeah. It shows you're curious and engaged.
That's great advice. Okay, we've covered so much ground already in this first part of our deep dive.
Yeah, we've barely scratched the surface.
We've explored the aircraft dispatcher role, talked about those tough interview questions, and even touched on how RoleCatcher can help you prepare.
It's been a good start.
But there's still more to come. In part 2 of our deep dive, we'll delve even deeper into those skills and qualities that make a successful aircraft dispatcher.
We'll unpack those even further.
So stay tuned for more insights and tips to help you land that dream job in aviation.
Can't wait. All right, welcome back to our deep dive into the world of aircraft dispatchers.
Yeah, we're ready to go even deeper.
Before we jump back to those interview questions,
Right.
I think it's worth spending some time talking about the specific skills that are really crucial for success in this role.
Yeah, you're right. We touched on teamwork and communication in the last part,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a whole constellation of skills that go into making a great aircraft dispatcher.
It's not just about knowing how to read a weather map.
Definitely not. There's so much more to it.
One skill that I think often gets overlooked is active listening.
Active listening.
It might sound basic, but in a fast-paced, high-pressure environment like this one,
Right.
it's Absolutely essential.
So it's more than just hearing what's being said. It's about truly understanding and processing that information.
Exactly. You need to be able to pick up on those nuances, ask clarifying questions, and be fully present in the communication.
Otherwise, things could slip through the cracks.
Exactly. Think about it. You're constantly receiving information from pilots, air traffic controllers, ground staff, meteorologists.
So many different sources.
You're even monitoring automated systems, being able to process all that accurately and efficiently. It's vital for making safe and timely decisions.
And then on the flip side of that is clear communication, right? You have to be able to convey all that information to all those different parties.
Absolutely. And your communication needs to be concise, accurate,
Easily understood.
especially when you're dealing with time-sensitive situations or emergencies.
Right. Every second counts in those moments.
Exactly. You got to get the information across quickly and effectively.
I can only imagine the pressure during things like weather delays or mechanical issues.
Oh yeah, things can get pretty intense.
You need to be able to stay calm and communicate clearly under pressure.
And that's why critical thinking and decision-making are such crucial skills for an aircraft dispatcher.
So you're not just following a set of procedures, you're constantly analyzing situations, assessing risks.
And making sound decisions, often with limited information.
And those decisions have a huge impact on the safety of hundreds of people.
Exactly. It's a big responsibility.
It sounds like it takes a special kind of person to handle that kind of pressure.
It definitely does.
Someone who can think on their feet, adapt to those ever-changing circumstances.
And make the right call in the moment.
And all of this is happening in a highly collaborative environment.
Right. You're not working in isolation.
So strong interpersonal skills and teamwork are essential too.
Absolutely. You need to be able to build rapport with all those different teams.
Communicate effectively, navigate any potential conflicts.
And do it all in a professional and productive way.
This is really giving me a whole new appreciation for what aircraft dispatchers do.
Yeah, it's a challenging but rewarding role.
Okay, so let's talk about how to showcase all these skills during the interview.
All right, good idea.
I'm sure interviewers are going to be looking for evidence of these abilities in your responses.
Oh, they definitely will.
One question that I'm guessing will almost certainly come up is, what are your strengths and weaknesses?
The classic strengths and weaknesses question.
It can be a tough one to answer in a way that's both honest and strategic.
Right. You don't want to come across as arrogant, but you also don't want to downplay your skills.
Yeah, finding that balance can be tricky.
It is. The key is to choose strengths that are relevant to the role and back them up with concrete examples.
So for example, if you say you're a strong communicator,
You need to give a specific example of a time when you effectively communicated something complex.
to a diverse group of people.
Exactly. Show, don't just tell.
And when it comes to weaknesses, I guess honesty is still the best policy.
Yeah, definitely be honest, but choose a weakness that you're actively working to improve.
So frame it in a positive light.
Right. For instance, you could say something like, I sometimes get bogged down in details, but I'm learning to prioritize tasks and delegate more effectively.
So you're showing self-awareness and a willingness to grow.
Exactly. It turns a potential negative into a positive.
That's a good strategy.
And it shows the interviewer that you're committed to continuous improvement.
Okay, I like that. Now, what about questions related to customer service? I know aircraft dispatchers don't directly interact with passengers,
That's true.
but I noticed your career guide emphasizes the importance of customer and personal service in this role.
That's because even though you're working behind the scenes, your decisions directly impact the passenger experience.
So if there are delays, cancellations, reroutings,
It all affects those passengers and their satisfaction.
so there is a customer service element to the job, even if it's indirect.
Absolutely. And the interviewer might ask you about your understanding of those principles or how you'd approach handling difficult situations.
Like when there are those inevitable flight disruptions.
Exactly. And, those can be really stressful for passengers.
So how would you suggest someone approach those kinds of questions?
Well, I think empathy is key. You got to put yourself in the passenger's shoes and think about how you would want to be treated.
So even though you're not face-to-face with them, you still need to communicate in a way that's professional and compassionate.
Exactly. It's about understanding their frustrations and managing their expectations.
Okay, so we've covered active listening, communication, critical thinking, teamwork, even customer service.
That's a lot to juggle.
Are there any other skills that are particularly important for this role?
Well, your materials definitely emphasize the technical side of things.
Knowledge of aviation regulations, weather patterns, navigation systems, that kind of thing.
All of that is super important. The interviewer wants to make sure you have a solid foundation in those areas.
So they might ask specific questions about regulations or weather phenomena.
They definitely could. They might even get into the functionality of different navigation systems.
So brushing up on those topics before the interview is a good idea.
Absolutely. Show them you know your stuff.
And speaking of knowing your stuff, how does RoleCatcher's AI come into play when it comes to technical knowledge?
So RoleCatcher can actually analyze those job descriptions and identify the specific technical skills they're looking for.
Oh, wow, that's helpful.
So if a job posting mentions experience with a particular software system or knowledge of certain regulations, RoleCatcher will flag that and suggest ways to incorporate those keywords into your resume and cover letter.
So it's like having a personalized study guide telling you exactly what to focus on.
It is. It takes the guesswork out of it.
That's incredible. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive.
We've made some good progress.
We've really explored those essential skills and qualities that make a successful aircraft dispatcher.
And how to effectively showcase them during an interview.
But before we wrap up this part, I want to circle back to that career guide again.
Okay.
It mentions the importance of networking in the aviation industry.
Yes, networking. Can't forget about that.
Can you tell us more about why that's so important, especially in this field? All right, welcome back to our deep dive. We're wrapping up our journey into the world of aircraft dispatchers. We've talked skills, interview questions, AI tools. Now let's land this plane with one final crucial element.
You're talking about networking, right?
You got it. I know for some folks, networking can feel a little, intimidating.
Yeah, it can be. But in the aviation world, it's a total game changer.
Okay, break it down for us. Why is networking so important in this field specifically?
Well, think about it. Aviation is all about connections. It's a tight-knit community.
Right.
And building those relationships can open doors to opportunities you might not even know existed.
So it's more than just handing out resumes at a job fair.
Oh, way more. It's about making genuine connections, learning from people who are already in the trenches, doing the job you want to do.
So tapping into that hidden job market.
Exactly. Remember those professional organizations we talked about? Attending their conferences, their workshops, their events. That's where the magic happens.
So it's not just about adding lines to your resume, it's about meeting people face to face.
Exactly. And don't underestimate online networking either. LinkedIn is a goldmine for connecting with people in aviation.
Oh, that's a good point. I hadn't really thought about that.
Yeah, find those groups specific to aircraft dispatching, jump into discussions, share your insights.
And connect with folks whose careers you admire.
Right. You can learn so much from them.
It's like having a virtual mentor panel right at your fingertips.
That's a great way to put it. And speaking of mentors,
Mm-hmm.
don't be shy about reaching out to people for informational interviews.
Well, those can be so valuable.
They are. Most professionals are happy to share their experiences, offer advice, if someone's genuinely interested.
So even if a company isn't actively hiring at the moment,
Doesn't hurt to reach out.
it could still be worthwhile to connect with someone who works there.
Absolutely. Learn about the company culture, the day-to-day realities of the job. You never know what a simple conversation might lead to.
It's all about planting those seeds, building relationships, and making yourself known.
Exactly. You might get a referral down the line or just gain a valuable connection who can offer guidance and support.
That's a great point. Now, remember how we talked about RoleCatcher and using AI to tailor your resume and cover letter?
Mm-hmm.
I think networking can also help you fine-tune those materials, right?
Absolutely. When you're talking to people in the field, ask them what they look for in an aircraft dispatcher.
What skills and qualities are most important to them?
Their insights can really help you highlight the things that resonate with hiring managers.
Like getting a sneak peek behind the curtain.
Right. Networking can give you that competitive edge, those real-world insights that you just can't get from a job description.
This has been fantastic. We've explored the role of an aircraft dispatcher from every angle.
We covered a lot of ground, that's for sure.
Responsibilities, skills, interview prep, AI tools, and now networking. It's all connected.
That's all part of the journey.
So for our listener out there who's getting ready for that big interview,
Yeah.
remember, preparation is key. Research the role, practice your answers, and most importantly, get out there and network.
Build those connections.
Because in aviation, who you know can make a real difference.
Absolutely.
We're so excited for you as you take on this challenge.
Good luck.
And we'll be here cheering you on every step of the way.
Keep those dreams soaring high.
Until next time, happy flying.